Quick clarification on the last video. I am in no way advocating restrictive cultures in churches. I do believe it tends to quench the spirit when it's not spirit led. Uh, you know, Nor are we to be busybody in other people's affairs, trying to find ways to restrict them. You know, I, and I watch TV and stuff like that. That wasn't what I was saying. My thing is that we have missed the mark in a sense by misdefining legalism so that we don't get to the root of what it actually is. And because of the way it's defined, people think we're fighting against something we're not. If you have something in you that tells you, you know what, I want to live a pure life and I don't watch TV, and I dress real modestly, and and I go to a church and that's kind of the way we are, and this is by choice, not compulsion, um, then that's not what we're fighting against. That is a perfectly a valid expression of Christ, and if it's done in grace, it's a demonstration of the power of God. I haven't really seen it done in grace, but theoretically, like I was saying, the early church, they had an outpouring of grace that was so strong that their life was just completely impacted by it corporately, so that their culture became a culture of holiness that eventually devolved into legalism. But, you know, I'm not going to let someone tell me how I should live. However, I'm not going to, if I'm in close contact with believers, I'm going to do my best not to live in a way that offends their conscience. It's a balance, that's a matter of walking in love, not of legalism. We are not to be slaves of men. We're not to be restricted or restrictive of other people, as long as they're not handling sin. Sin is something else that we deal with. But what I was trying to say is that is not the real issue. The real issue of legalism is when you're tampering with the gospel. Somebody made a good point that, she went to a church that was, didn't really have any specific rules about how to dress, but people dressed really nice or whatever. And she realized it was legalistic, not because of that, but because they didn't preach the gospel. A legalistic church just doesn't preach the gospel. They can be all against legalism and seem like they're just so hip and contemporary and have a coffee house and have a uh, pleasing service and funny comedians come and do Christian comedy and great music and watch baseball games and football on the big screen and have a basketball court and have all that stuff. And yet if they don't preach the gospel, it's a work system. It is a work system. If it preaches Christ, or if it associates itself with the name of Christ and doesn't preach the gospel, it is a legalistic works factory, because all of your work in it has nothing to do with salvation. What are you sustaining? Their programs. What are those programs for? Building their system. Well, what's the system for? To keep growing. I mean, there's no point. And it's not producing people who are saved. And a person who is not saved is automatically a legalist. They're automatically on the works system. So now I've probably even muddied the waters more, but I just wanted to give a little clarification that I'm not advocating restrictions and a culture of austerity. I'm not saying let's go be Mennonites or Amish, but the reason the Mennonites and Amish are not that they're legalists isn't because they don't use electricity. It's because they don't preach the gospel. And when you preach the gospel properly, people have freedom in Christ to live in a way that satisfies their conscience, and will live in a way that doesn't damage other people's conscience. All right, take care.